Hey y'all, Chris Wing here. As I promised, I'm gonna do a little rundown video of what I did for my custom outfitting in my new carbon jet, and kind of my theory and take on boat outfitting. It's been a while since I've been able to put in a dramatic amount of time into customizing a boat for myself. We run an instruction fleet, and so boats kind of interchange hands frequently. And so what I think modern outfitting has done has created a system that capitalizes on the ability to change outfitting quickly and to get it as close to comfortable and functional as you can without spending a great deal of time. Traditionally, boats, you go back to some of the first rotomolded boats, you got a shell, a seat, and a bag of foam. You probably didn't get the bag of foam, you probably had to buy the foam, and you shaped it based on your needs. Or the seat molds themselves were already shaped in a way that was conducive to keeping a butt put in the seat and not so much fitting a wide variety of shapes and sizes. I think the actual hard components of kayaks have become bigger, so as to fit a broader spectrum of users. And then a lot of the components, the softer components, hip pads, seat pads, things like that, are there to kind of fill in the gaps for those that really need it. But I had this opportunity, the Jed came with stock Piranha outfitting, which works and is functional just like a lot of other manufacturers create. What I like about Piranha stock outfitting is that it's light, it's not overly complex, and there's not a ton of moving parts. When you start adding components or different features, you start to add weight. You also start to add components that actually can break as well. Although, kind of across the board in regards to our industry, by and large, folks are making really stout outfitting and boats. If you really think about the abuse that kayakers put on their equipment, UV degradation, wet, dry, not to mention just general misuse, and not taking care of things, not cleaning things, sand and stuff, rubbing and all of that. It's nothing short of a miracle that boats last as long as they do. So kudos to all the manufacturers out there. But I've really done well with the Piranha outfitting, especially for the river runners. When it comes to playboating, though, playboating is one of those things that I'm going to spend a lot of time with and really make sure that it's fitted for me. And again, this was the first opportunity I've had in a long time to make a custom boat, completely for me. Like, nobody else is going to sit in this kayak. It just won't happen unless they're shaped and sized like me. And not to mention, this is kind of my baby right here. So maybe one day somebody else will sit in it, but as for now, this is only my butt's gonna see this seat. So I guess what I'll do is I have both boats here, both Jeds, the plastic Jed with stock outfitting and the carbon Jed with my my custom outfitting. It's not complete yet. I still have some old Wave Sport hip pads. The reason why the Wave Sport hip pads are in here, I do like those because they're super rigid hip pads. And I still think to this day that whiteout outfitting was some of the best outfitting. I like something with a little less friction, but there's enough tackiness to where your butt would stay put in a seat, no problem. So that's why those are living in there right now. I will end up putting a custom hip pad in here. But if you kind of look at the seat itself, everything is static. There's going to be no moving parts except these thigh straps, and I'll talk about those here in a moment. But if you look at the seat itself, you can actually see the shape of my butt and my legs, that would fill the space. And the idea here is that I glue or kind of suction down into this seat and I don't move from there. my philosophy has always been that the saddle, you'll hear me use this term a lot, the saddle itself, the hip pads, the seat, and the backrest, and the thigh hooks really should be what kind of keep you put in the boat. The backrest and the foot brace are kind of points of leverage along the long axis of the boat. So what actually holds you into the boat and keeps your butt put in the seat is generally going to be those major components here: hip pads, seat, and the thigh hooks. And you can see what I did with the seat pad. I've raised the seat. I use the general rule of thumb. My belly button's about cockpit rim level at this midline axis here, or the short axis of the boat. I've added what would traditionally be called a pleasure pod, and that's to prevent my butt from sliding forward in the seat. So it's keeping my sit bones back and allows me to keep what we would call, anterior pelvic tilt. I don't want to end up like this, although I can still rest back like this if I need to, because sitting like this all day is actually exhausting. You look at the difference between, say, this and this. Again, these hip pads, back band, the only part of this system here that really isn't moving a whole lot are probably going to be your thigh hooks and your seat itself. The hip pads here, these are a little bit floppier than I like, and that's why I switched them out with the Wave Sport ones. The seat itself, I raised the seat here with a couple, I probably got about 1.5 inches of foam in there, just underneath the stock seat pad. And then, as you can see, the backrest is still in the boat, that came stock. So, I think the biggest thing here that's interesting is, why would I go with this piece of foam that obviously looks like it sits a lot lower, in that saddle area than this backrest? You see the backrest actually kind of sits up and out of the cockpit rim. Is anytime I was doing looping tricks, basically looping tricks primarily, where I was actually going to get inverted and gravity kind of takes over, I end up with this underneath my butt. And this is pretty universal. There is very few backrests out there where I didn't find this happen. I won't even forget, I was in the middle of a competition in Vail. I was in a Jackson All-Star. It was in 2008, and that backband not only went under my butt, but it also popped out of the cleats, and that was my own fault. I didn't lock them in. I was nervous. But the backband itself, very commonly, I would have, right under my butt. So the purpose of this piece right here, and it's not permanently glued in, but as you can see, this doesn't move or even rotate. So as I, kind of somersault through, and you start to lay back, the backband naturally wants to kind of rotate back. And one of the things that prevents it from rotating up too far is you got this strap in here that helps prevent that rotation from going up, but it doesn't really help it from keeping it back. You can tighten these bungees down, but again, you got a lot of give there. So now there is a trade-off here. You got to be careful about putting a piece of static foam on the lower portion of your back. You can feel the top of your pelvis back through here, and that bony part, kind of the top of your hip bones, and back right to the small of your back here. You don't really want to have anything sit up into that soft tissue any higher, because if you start to lean back on something static like that, you're going to start running into the chance of kind of hyperextending your back. So this sits down, and it sits down only on the bony part. It doesn't go any higher. This here will sit up higher and into that softer part. This is, for folks that over tighten back bands, you get that sore spot. You're putting it on the soft tissue as opposed to the bony tissue. So that's one of the reasons for that sore spot. And we tend to over tighten a lot of the time because we're compensating for bad posture and weakness in our core. So that said, you have to have all of these other components nice and snug in order for this to really work. My butt sits down into the seat and kind of stays suctioned into the seat that way. And this idea kind of came from slalom seats. You look at high performance kayaks, a lot of the time they're just using a carbon seat that's actually shaped, they call it a power seat. Actually, Corn Addison makes one with his brand Soul Kayaks, for his kayaks that your butt can actually sit down in. Ideally, if you wanted something hard like that, you would put it into a CAD program and have it actually designed for your butt. Foam is the next best thing, and it's way more affordable. So this is kind of the idea. So once this is glued in, you can tell, like, this is just kind of grooved out, and it cups down onto the back of the seat itself, and it's pretty snug. And once that's glued in, that's not going anywhere. So that's kind of my theory on the backrest. And again, it's a backrest, it's not a back band. It should be pulling you up into that spot. It should be keeping your butt put, and only be there kind of for you to kind of rest on. Again, that's probably more of my personal opinion on that. The other thing with this here is, you've got all these moving parts and everything. I hate moving parts. I want to set it and forget it, and that's it. I want to be done with it once it's actually set. And I think long term, what's going to end up happening with my plastic boat is I'm going to end up doing the exact same kind of outfitting job that I did in my carbon boat. But again, because I just want to be expeditious sometimes and get on the water, you kind of resort back to the stock outfitting. And again, that's what stock outfitting is there for, okay? So yeah, that's what's going on there. The thigh hook itself, especially with piranhas, this is an older outfitting. The new stout outfitting, it's more robust, heavier, and you actually get a little bit more of a hook, and you can even add in the hooker thigh braces as well to really keep you put. But again, mini cell foam goes a long way. And I'm gonna take you on a tour here of the boat real quick, just so you guys can kind of see that. And I'll show you both what I've done in this one and in this one here. We'll set that down and show you. So those thigh hooks do a really good job, again, of keeping you in the seat. Now, I had a buddy, Mark Miller, he posted up, he goes, I had these thigh straps in here once in a boat, in a play boat that I had, and all it did was it pulled my legs out of the thigh hook, and I didn't actually have my knees or my thighs up in the thigh hooks. And I totally get that. It is gonna pull your legs down if you over tighten them. Again, this is just adding an extra component. And for me, more than anything, it's so, again, if I'm getting into those looping tricks, I'm not, I got this power seat kind of molded out to my butt, but that's gonna go even a step further, and it's just gonna keep me seated down inside of that, that boat outfitting. So I'm not over cranking or over tightening. I've still got good contact with my legs up in the thigh hooks here. But these thigh straps are really beneficial. These are C1 thigh straps. Again, this goes back to, you're gonna hear a name come up several times here. Corn Addison sells these on his Soul Kayaks website. And what's cool about these is they got a quick release lever on them. And if I'm actually sitting down inside, it's a lot easier. What I'm gonna end up doing is kind of creating one strap, just like an eject cord, to actually pull these out. But they're super solid. They're in through the mounting brackets on the seat itself, not between the carbon and the bottom plate. No, actually between the carbon and the bottom plate. That way, the webbing itself is seated in there really nicely. I took some flat webbing. I didn't use tubular. Tubular is too thick, and it gets heavier when it's wet. The flat webbing actually is even, I think, a little bit stronger. I welded them. I welded the holes and everything else. That way there's no fraying or tearing. And those are mounted in kind of back behind the seat tower. The only weakness I can see maybe happening there is it's kind of pulling on the outside of the seat. The webbing is, but it's not plastic on the carbon seat. It's just the webbing sitting on it. So, and then it's mounted to a D-ring on the floor of the boat with G-Flex, which I did not do a pretty job. That was kind of my first time doing that. And yeah, before I sit down and kind of take you for a full tour, I'm going to show you one last component here. And this is kind of the thing that always, folks are always like, what kind of foam do you use for your feet? You'll see a lot of boats outfitted with these huge blocks of foam where it's like a bulkhead in a creek boat. I don't like that in play boats. First of all, I don't have enough space in play boats to really have my full foot up against it. So really what I'm looking for is I kind of create these foot discs, and let's see that here. I'm gonna pull this down. But I obviously am not wearing shoes like this, but that's how my feet rest inside of the kayak there. They'll probably actually sit more with the arch, and my feet kind of wrap just a touch more. And then I put mini cell foam on both the floor and the deck to just kind of protect my toes. I do like barefoot play boating. There's nothing that beats that in my opinion. And I know that's not ideal for river running, and I do wear a bootie when river running, but if I'm parking and playing, I'm definitely barefoot. It's what I prefer. But yeah, let me take you on a quick little kind of tour here. Okay, so as you can see here, the way this came, pretty standard, center pillar in the back, glued in really well. The folks at P&H, by the way, did a really wonderful job. Like the carbon layup on this and the paint and just everything is, I'm blown away. I've already put some scuffs and everything else on it. Like that's gonna happen. It's it's a kayak. It's a tool, not a jewel, as we like to say. But as you can see, like it's really well done. The seam is really, really nice. The metal flake, I'm gonna have to get a new kit to match this. Like otherwise I'm just not doing it any justice. But all I did here, this is 1 inch mini cell here. Cut and shaped it. I cut some kind of slits on the backside so it'll actually bend, and I put a little heat to it so it'll actually kind of mold a little bit more. Used weldwood contact cement. I traced, I stenciled on the outside or on the carbon seat, put the glue down, and then glued the other side, let it dry, re-glued, let it get tacky, pressed it, put weight on it, and it takes no time to dry. This, considering it has a bend in it and everything, took a little bit more encouragement. I put 10-pound weights down on top of it, just to keep that seated down. There's a little bit of air in there. You can hear it every now and again, but I did a pretty good job. You're trying to eliminate as much of that air as possible. And then got the what we call the pleasure pod. That's, I think, a little ironic. There's nothing pleasurable about it when you get jammed forward in your seat, but it keeps your butt put in the seat. This is pretty significant. That's about 4-inch mini cell foam, cut down and then shaped with a Stanley Sureform. By the way, the only tools you need in order to make any of this happen is a Stanley Sureform. You can use like a bread knife, but I have a buddy, Joel McCune, who sold me on the turkey carver. An electric turkey carver works awesome, and you can shape and everything else. You can actually see some of the blade marks there. And I used a torch too to just kind of melt it a little bit so it seals. That way it's not absorbing too much water. This will absorb a little bit of water, but not anything like some of the modern outfitting we see. If you look down inside here, that's terrible that you can see the mini cell foam. You see here we've got the D-ring and the terrible G-Flex job. The G-Flex is expensive, but holy cow, that's one hell of an adhesive. And then I just tied the ratchets onto the D-ring. And this idea came from my buddy Mike Patterson, who's the one that put me onto a carbon boat. He let me borrow his this past winter or last winter, and before COVID hit and everything, I was gonna buy it, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, I think now's not the time. You look down inside here, you can actually see the thigh hook, and that's glued to the top there, only to the top. So you see this kind of flaps, and on the back side of that, let's see if we can see there. And again, the glare here can be a bit tough. On the back side, you can see I actually put in foam shims. That way, if I have to add more winter, summertime, whatever, it's not permanent, like I can continue to add. And that glue job that I did was enough to where that's gonna stay put. And if I gotta reglue it, I reglue it. Again, you can see the thigh hook attachment here. It's kind of hard to tell, but you can tell there's no metal or plastic on the carbon seat. The thing I like about the job that I did is it still shows off the carbon. It's too pretty to cover up. The stock outfitting was covering all of it. And again, you're spending this much money on a boat, and it's custom. Show it off. Like these folks at P&H, they do incredible work. It's come a long way from even what they used to do. So yeah, again, the foot foam. This foot foam goes in like so. And then what I did here, I miscut my seat backrest a little bit, so I have to shim it. But again, you can see I got this groove here that sits right down, really nice and snug. I don't even necessarily need to glue it, but I just want to make sure that it's totally solid. I did end up putting a little bit of shim there, that'll glue. And then again, if I need to dress this up a little bit, I can too. But yeah, that's basically it. So when I sit down inside of this thing, I'm not budging. I got a little bit of wiggle. You should have a little bit of wiggle. Like, you don't want it to be so tight that you can't move. Again, you've got to be able to move your body in the boat a little bit. It's what we call isometric force. You're trying to put force into the boat. If you took all your wiggle out of it, you're not gonna be able to enact force into the boat. You take this to the extreme degree. You think about like sprint kayakers. Their outfitting actually has a swivel seat, so they can actually rotate into their boat much more than static outfitting like this. That wouldn't be ideal for a playboat. I don't want a swivel seat in a playboat, but I do need a touch of wiggle. So, going over to the plastic boat though, you can see the difference. And again, the idea of plastic boats in stock outfitting is, again, so folks, you can put multiple people in the boats, you can resell them, all of that good stuff. I'm just not sold on back bands. I'm not. I'm really tired of them. In this old setup that Piranha had done, and they got away from this, but even the newer one isn't perfect. But I'm just not a fan of back bands. I've had them break on me. Give me something that I can set and forget. Anyway, that's kind of my breakdown on why I do the boat outfitting the way I do it. Also got a nice little tour of my college dorm room. Yes, I'm 40 years old and living in a college dorm room. Well, that's a long story in and of itself. But I will say it does allow me time to do stuff like this again, so that's great. Why did I go with this boat? Why did I end up getting this? I didn't get this for the novelty of it. I've paddled carbon boats before. I've always known that I loved them. I really enjoy them. But I've got some bigger goals for myself as well. I ain't dead yet, there's some things on the horizon that I would love to be prepared for. Will this be my last carbon boat? Oh, I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. And the Jed, in and of itself, this is a design that's 10 years old, maybe, or at least close to it. It's a Robert Pearson design. I was really, thinking to myself, should I wait? Should I try something different? But it was a no-brainer. Like, this is a really well-designed kayak. It's there's a reason why it still does really well in competition. Obviously our industry has to keep selling kayaks, so that's why we design. And the cool thing about design too is you can make minute changes and have drastic effects. So yeah, there's some benefits to a new design all the time, but I will say that there's also a benefit to kind of sitting back and seeing what's going on and really thinking hard about a design. And that's one thing I will say that Robert Pearson does exceptionally well, is his designs are extremely well thought and nuanced. I really like his design ethos. So I'm thrilled with this. Like, it's got its scuffs and everything else like that, but it had to. Again, I'll say it. It's a tool, not a jewel. Really excited to continue to put this thing to work. So more video to come of the boat in action.